Well, we're heading out to Shay Park.
Shay Park?
Yes, it's actually named for your favorite locomotive.
Oh, really?
The Shay.
Well, that's in Saratoga Springs, isn't it?
It is. It's,
wow.
It's the Utah Live Steamers, I think is the name of it.
Oh, that group.
But they're building a 7.5-inch gauge railroad in Shay Park.
Oh, neat.
Shay Park not named because of the railroad that they're building there, but because the Utah and Western, it's built on their old railroad grade.
Really?
And this park is themed to the Utah and Western Railroad since that's the park. And
oh, wow.
these guys got permission to build a live steam railroad in there because it's a railroad themed park.
Well, that is great.
So this should be fun. We're going to go check out the newest live steam railroad here in Utah. Well, Jim Wanless has been trying to convince us to come out to Shay Park and see what those guys have been up to for quite some time.
It looks fun, though.
Oh, it's great. They're doing a magnificent job here. It's the Utah Live Steamers. They're building a 7.5-inch gauge railroad in this park. They have work sessions out here at least once a week. They're building track panels at somebody's house, and then they bring them out here and lay them in the park.
That's neat.
They've got this cool little train they use for ballasting track. It comes out here on this trailer. But they're really putting together a first-class little railroad here. Not using it just yet. They're building it, is what they're doing. This is their first loop of track. They call it the Brighton Loop. They're going to have 2 loops of track, the Brighton Loop and the Timpanogos Loop. As you can see, the Timpanogos Loop has a little bit of work still to be done. And this is what they've been working on, is the larger of the loops, the Timpanogos Loop. They're figuring out the curve radius here so that they can get a nice smooth radius on the track as they lay it here on the grade. All of the grades are all in. So they've got this great playground here for the kids. It's all railroad themed.
Isn't that awesome?
The whole park is, of course, railroad themed. They've got this railroad bridge here, and they've got this. It's supposed to be a locomotive.
A locomotive.
But, to a kid, it's a locomotive.
Yes, it's very real.
Kids just suspend disbelief and engage their fantasies, and boy, do they have a great playground here to mess around with.
They sure do.
They even have tunnels to go through. So here they are laying the track on the Timpanogos Loop. Timpanogos is named for an Indian princess, and there's a mountain named after her.
Exactly.
And so on and so forth. Anyway, this is the Timpanogos Loop. It's the big loop on the railroad. And they've got it about half laid at this point.
Okay.
As you can see, they're laying 2x4s up on edge and using those for ties.
Isn't that interesting?
It's an easy way to do it, but the key is it's a much more stable way to do it. It produces a really stable track. All of the track is screwed in place, and look, they're even using tie plates.
That's cute.
Isn't that neat? And once the ballast is in place, you can't tell that they're 2x4s. It's a really stable track, everything works really well, and it just looks really good. With the grades all in place, the trick here is just making sure that their curvatures are nice and smooth as they go around on the existing grade, which is already pretty much level and all of the grades established, so they don't need to worry about that. Now this grade crossing here is really interesting. This is where their track crosses over the old grade of the Salt Lake and Western Railroad.
Oh, look at that.
It's a really interesting old railroad. It was built in 1881, ostensibly by the Union Pacific under a different name. That was a technique they liked to use. So if the railroad went bust, it wouldn't hurt the Union Pacific. And it went out here to the Tintic Mining District.
Oh, wow.
Eureka.
Yes.
And it was hugely profitable.
Oh, yes.
And very successful, so the Union Pacific just absorbed it into their system after a few years. But the grade's in really good shape, all kinds of neat artifacts to explore. And this is, in fact, the reason why Shay Park is here. It's named Shay Park, and it has a railroad theme because of this old railroad and this incredibly walkable grade. The railroad connected the Tintic mining district to the main line of the Union Pacific here in Lehigh at what is now Lehigh Block. Check out the neat beehive kilns.
Those are awesome.
So as the park already had a railroad theme and a really neat grade to explore, the idea of putting in a 7.5-inch gauge live steam railroad made perfect sense.
Absolutely.
And so the Utah Live Steamers were approached, or they approached the city. I'm not sure how that went, but they very quickly put together a deal to put together a live steam railroad here in Shay Park. They're hoping to have their track laid here by spring, and then they're going to start on their train station.
Oh boy.
Well, they've got a little bit more work to do, but it's getting there.
I can't believe how neat that is. I wish I had property and I'd have a little train on it.
That is so many people's dream, isn't it?
Well, it would be fun.
To do that. And
Just
yet
go and play.
there are plenty of clubs around like these guys and the LA Live
Oh,
Steamers and
that's just wonderful.
people who have built a railroad quite often in a city park. And you can at least take your engine there and run it. And you don't necessarily have to have 30 to 70 acres of land. Although we will be covering a railroad here in the near future where they do have 70 acres of land.
Oh, yes.
And it's just a guy and his friends building a railroad.
Just
on it.
reminds me when you were telling me about the little railroad that ran around the park in Mackinac. We were in search of that one.
Same idea.
Long gone, but
Long gone. That
yeah.
was a Cagney,
Ah.
but that would be so cool. But it's so cool to see more and more backyard railroads, live steam railroads, even garden railroads, and more full-size steam locomotives and all kinds of things. Railroading as a hobby is enjoying another uptick.
yes.
And thank goodness for that, because that's really cool. That is some major screwing around. And I've always said that when you're really looking for people who really, really screw around, look no further than railroaders, because
Exactly.
they are just over the top, generally speaking.
Usually they are.
They just do things that you just,
What?
excuse me, what? They're doing what? So that's really cool. And these guys are putting together a lovely little railroad there in the park, and
Yes.
it should just be really cool. And we're looking forward to the grand opening of the whole thing, which should happen in 2019, we think.
Yeah.
By then they should have the train station and everything built. So that'll be really cool.
Right.
Well, if you haven't been over to the channel, do pop on over to the channel. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, then you want to be a subscriber. Because if you're a subscriber, and then if you click the little bell next to the subscribe button, it will notify you via text message or whatever you set it up to do, message when we upload. Typically these days that's every Sunday. We always upload every Sunday morning. I mean, duh, we're always going to do that.
Right.
But also more often than not on Wednesday and sometimes other days. And 2 weeks ago, you'll notice we put both shows up on Sunday.
Right.
Because we thought we're going to put the Halloween show up because it's going to be Halloween on Tuesday. We don't want to put Halloween up on Wednesday. That's after Halloween. So we just said nuts to that. Let's just put both shows up on Sunday. So that was a little unprecedented for
Right,
us.
just a little.
2 shows at once. But it was just because we wanted to get the Halloween show up so you could see it before Halloween. And it was fun that way. Well, if you haven't subscribed, do subscribe. And the best way to do that is to click on the blue button. Ready for the blue button? Zoink! That blue button right here that says subscribe takes you to the channel, makes you a subscriber. Then you click on the bell and you will be notified.
Right.
Well, we're not sure how you found this movie on the internet, and we hope you didn't find it boring. And we will see you here in a few days with some more massive screwing around. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.